Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. It is card review season in Hearthstone, boys. It's a Witchwood expansion review round 3. There are some exciting cards coming out, and individuals are starting to reveal them, and this is when we're getting a lot of the interesting cards, a lot of the legendary cards, and I got quite a bunch for you guys today. So let's kick it off. The first card in order that was revealed that I didn't review quite yet is Lord Godfrey. The second Warlock legendary has been revealed, and it is a crazy one. 7 mana, 4/4, deal 2 damage to all other minions, and if any die, repeat this battle cry. So it's kind of like a passive 2 spell damage defile, basically. And it's on a minion that does not kill itself. It's all other minions. So you basically get to keep this guy. Yeah, the downside is it costs 7, but you have to remind yourselves, in the past, people have used a 2 mana spell damage minion to combo Defile, and that worked. And that was a 2-card combo, and it cost 4 mana for an effect that was not quite as good as that. And you still get the 4/4. So if you really kind of, do the equal value involved in that, using 2 cards instead of 1 is kind of like, spending another, mana to mana and a half, because you do need that extra card. It's kind of like having a card with a card draw ability. And you get the 4/4 body. So really, you kind of get a 4/4 body for like 1 to 2 mana, and it's all in one on one card. That kind of passes the disadvantage of it, actually costing 7 mana, because the Defile effect is typically more useful earlier in the game. But this is so much more powerful. This is almost guaranteed to clear the board almost no matter what. It's just crazy. This card is insane. Now, the main issue is that Warlock already has so many powerful control tools. Control Warlock is one of the primary decks being played right now. And one of the primary decks being played right now that's not losing very much, in some cases losing nothing at all in the upcoming standard rotation that is accompanying the Witchwood expansion. So I feel that while this card is possibly one of the best cards we've ever seen, it might get not necessarily overshadowed, but it's going to be a crowded space. I don't think the true power level of this card will really be highlighted because Warlock already has so many powerful removal tools. So yes, I think it'll belong in most of the Warlock decks that have these control mechanics or the Q blocks and all that. I think it belongs in almost all of those decks, and it will seem really good. But when Defile cycles out, like next year, when a few of these other cards that have supported Warlock for such a long time cycle out, that's when this card is going to make a gigantic impact, and you will see. We also got Muck Hunter, 5 mana, 5/8 rush, and your opponent gets 2/2/1 minions. Overall, that's pretty weak. It does increase the power level of Fireland's Portal because it's one of the best natural 5-drops with the battle cry not going off, but Fireland's Portal is part of the Karazhan set, so it is cycling out of the standard block, so it won't be that relevant. In Wild, Tempo Mage is pretty good, but there are some really wild things that can happen on the 5 mana cost drop anyway, so that's kind of a wash. The way that I think this card might have some viability has to do with Mind Control tech, the 3 mana 3/3 that if your opponent has 4 or more minions, you get 1 random 1. Now, the concept I have here comes from the fact that Mind Control tech has seen play not in every expansion, but roughly every other expansion since Hearthstone has come out, 4 or 5 years ago. So it's been a card that frequently comes back in the meta, and the way that I have to think about it is, if Mind Control tech is good enough to see play in your deck anyway, would you then play Muck Hunter to have more of a potent MC tech against other control decks? And I think that's possible. I think it is a very interesting card. It's a bit clumsy, but I wouldn't write it off completely. I think there is a small chance, but there's some chance still that it will see constructed play. We got the red Band Wasp, new warrior card, another rusher, 2 mana, 1/3. Really crap stats, but it has the rush and it has a large enrage buff. So if you're killing like a 1/1 minion, you basically get to kill it for free, and you get a 2 mana 4/2 beast. Is that good? It's alright. It's alright. It's basically just alright. I have to think of it kind of like a weapon. Typically, if you remember the old school fiery war axe, you'd kill something that didn't quite have 3 health, and then you would block your opponent's 2-drop or 3-drop following that. That's kind of what this does, but it loses a lot of flexibility because it's awful in the late game. So it's tough to say. It's probably better than it looks, but it looks pretty bad. Then we have Hunting Mastiff. Another rush card for Hunter this time. 2 mana 2/1, and it highlights the Echo mechanic as well. So you can potentially play 5 of these, get 10 damage on board control, spread across 5 bodies. That's pretty good in terms of the flexibility, but it's a very weak card to play in the earlier stages of the game. But flexibility can be very important. It's often an aspect of Hearthstone that is underestimated. And again, it's difficult to write off the card, even though it looks pretty mediocre to me. One other aspect that is pretty important to realize is the Death Knight for Hunters, the Deathstalker Rexar, will have his hero power updated after this expansion. So it will then include cards like the Hunting Mastiff, which might make some of the new beast combinations a lot stronger. And I like that aspect. It makes it so even if this card sees absolutely no play, it might make a pretty relevant impact for hunters who play the Hunter Death Knight card. I have a Druid card, Forest Guide. Now, I feel that this card has been pretty conflicting in terms of people's thoughts on Reddit and whatnot. I have to say, probably on the more optimistic side, that it is not completely horrible. Now, it takes a lot of understanding to see where this card might see some kind of action. It is a 4 mana 1/6, and at the end of your turn, both players draw a card. Now, that is a negative effect for the player. So the way you have to think about it is, if both players are drawing a card, that's kind of even. That's probably better than even, because you'd only include that if it favors you, in your deck at least, right? That's a little bit better than even. But this effect is at the end of your turn. And because it's at the end of the turn, it makes it better for your opponent, because you don't get to play the card that you draw from when you first play this. You get to play it 1 turn later. Your opponent, however, gets to play the card that he gets right away because he gets it right before his turn starts. So this effect is actually quite bad, and you really need a deck that needs this mechanic. It relies on this mechanic. Now, we have seen some Druid cards that require you to have a large number of cards in your hand, and they were mostly aggressive Druid cards. The problem with that is a lot of the aggressive Druid cards play in a way where you just dump them all as fast as possible. So it's very difficult to hold cards in an aggressive Druid deck while still being an aggressive Druid deck. And I think this card, although horrible, bridges that gap reasonably well. I don't think it's enough for the archetype to live, and I think that archetype's going to need a lot more help. But if that deck is going to exist, I think there's actually some chance that the Forest Guide will be included. The Forest Guide is not a milled Druid card. This card is only playable if you have a strong board position on the board, so if you have a lot of more dangerous cards on the board, and if you have a lot of cards that buff all of your minions, like, the Mark, they give all your minions +1/+1. The reason is a 4 mana 1/6 just gets killed by everything. If your opponent has 2 3/2 minions, he just kills it for free. One attack is just not good enough. It doesn't matter how much health a minion has if its attack is 0 or 1, because it just gets killed for free unless you're playing a very aggressive deck, unless you have a lot of buffs, which you can be playing. So it's going to require a lot of fine-tuning and a lot of balance, but I wouldn't quite write this card off despite it looking absolutely terrible. And I agree with you, it looks absolutely terrible. And we have a rogue card, Wanted. Deal 3 damage to a minion. If it kills it, you add a coin to your hand. So if it doesn't kill it, it's horrible. It's 4 mana, deal 3 damage. It's to a minion. It's worse than, it's worse than Wrath. It's worse than Dark Bomb. And it costs 4 mana, not 2. 4. So the card at face value is atrocious. But coins are really valuable if you're playing Miracle Rogue. getting an extra coin means not just getting an extra card with Auctioneer, it often means getting like 3 extra cards with Auctioneer. Because rogue players that play the Miracle package, getting a coin means 1 extra card from Auctioneer, means 1 more mana to play another spell that costs 1 mana, and typically when drawing 2 cards, you're somewhat likely to get Shadow Step, Prep, or a Backstab, or maybe a Counterfeit Coin if you're playing those, and that's another like 3rd card. So it's 2 to 3 cards worth of draw to have just another coin, and that makes the card okay, actually. Now, I talked a lot about cards that fit the Rogue playstyle. Rogue has traditionally got a lot of powerful cards from, the last few expansions, but they just don't fit what Rogue does best. Now, this card sucks, but it does fit what Rogue does best. So that is really important. That means this card could actually see play regardless of how terrible it is. Now, the 3 damage to kill a minion is certainly very bad because you might often have to overkill a minion just to get that coin. But just to get that coin is probably worth it if you're playing Miracle Package. So we'll see. And we got Scale Worm, a rare neutral 4-mana minion. It's a 4/4 beast and it gains 1 attack and rush if you're holding a dragon. Now, holding a dragon will be a little bit more difficult for the classes that are currently playing the dragon archetype like Priest. Now, I'm not even sure this is a great Priest card, but it's a pretty good Arena card at the very least. Basically, in Arena, a lot of people play taunts because they're good and because they're quite abundant. So what happens is if you have something that's like a 4-mana 5/4 rush, you kill Ascension and you have a 5/1. That's excellent. Now, in Constructed, things get a lot more complicated than that, and this card will probably fail to impress anyone, but who knows? I might be underestimating the rush mechanic, and it's certainly a well-statted, fairly powerful card nonetheless. And we have Vex Crow. 4-mana 3/3 mage card. It's a beast. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random 2-cost minion. So how many spells do you have to play for this card to be worth it? Probably just 1. If you play a spell, this is basically like a random 2-mana cost minion is not exactly a 2-mana cost minion that you'd put in your deck. So Vex Crow is kind of like a 2.5 mana card because 1 random 2-cost minion in terms of cards you actually put in your deck, it's probably only worth 1.5 mana or so. So 2.5 mana 3/3 with a reoccurring effect, so it poses a big threat to generate value later on. Yeah, that's worth it. So if you play Vex Crow and play 1 spell, this is a good card. So Tempo Mage is going to have a really good time playing this because Tempo Mage likes to play small spells and cheat out secrets for 0 mana. So that's really powerful when it comes to this card. Now, Tempo Mage is losing a lot. Tempo Mage is losing a lot of the secret cards, a lot of the secret synergy cards. It's losing Firelands Portal. So the Tempo Mage archetype might be dead for a while, but this is a card that could bring it right back. It is an extremely high power level card, and this might plague Arena for a while. But Mage is not top dog right now, so that might be just fine. Then we have Blackwalled Pixie, 3-mana 3/4, Battlecry Refresher Hero Power. Nothing too crazy. I don't see this as being too powerful. It's just a good card. I like it. Then we have Clockwork Automaton, 5-mana 4/4 mech, double the damage and healing of your hero power. So it's basically the Valen effect just for your hero power. Now, we know that with the new cards and all that, there are cards that increase the effectiveness of your hero power, either by reducing the mana cost or, in some cases, doubling the effect. The highest value hero power through healing or damage is going to be the upgraded base Priest hero power, which is going to be a heal for 4. So this is going to change that hero power while this is in play. It's not like a Battlecry effect. While this is in play, your hero power does double healing, double damage. So your Priest hero power will heal for 8, or if you convert the damage with an Auctioneer, it can deal 8 damage. And that's pretty good, but the card is horribly statted, and 5 is a lot of mana for that effect. So I actually don't think it'll see that much play in Priest, but I was actually thinking a little bit harder, and I think the Gul'dan, the Warlock Death Knight, has a huge gain from this because it's a life-stealing hero power. So The base Gul'dan hero power for the Death Knight is 3 damage and lifesteal. So you deal 3 and you heal for 3. Now, if you have this in play, you're going to deal 6 and heal for 12. So basically, this card is 9 healing if you are Warlock Death Knight mode. That's really good. That's like crazy good. That's better than, Antique Healbot. And that was, the cornerstone of Control Warlock back in the day. So the main issue is it's not consistent enough to rely on putting a card in your deck just because you're going to play the Death Knight eventually. So that's probably not going to be a thing unless they can create some kind of mechanism to more consistently and more quickly play your Death Knight card. I doubt they'll do that, but if they do, this card's going to be a lot better. We have Coffin Crasher, the 6-mana, 6/5 priest minion. It's Death Rattle to summon a Death Rattle minion from your hand. I originally thought it was going to be a copy, which made this unbelievably broken, but it's just quite a good card. Big Priest is going to be losing Barnes, but not too much else, so Big Priest might still be around. This kind of competes with Big Priest. It doesn't really work alongside the current version of Big Priest because you typically want bigger minions than that if you're going to be searching for them and whatnot. So it's a strange card. It's a very high power level. It's certainly mana cheating, which is very powerful in Priest, but it competes with the tools that Priest currently has. And that's a bit of a problem. I think if the current state of Big Priest would otherwise die because it's losing too much, this card will bring it back. But if not, I think it's a bit exclusive with the Big Priest package, so it's going to be quite polarizing, despite it obviously being a very high power level card. Summoning an Obsidian statue every time, I suppose. Then we got a couple of legendaries, pretty interesting ones. We got one of the warrior legendaries, Darius Crowley, 5-mana, 4/4. It's got Rush, and after it attacks and kills a minion, you gain +2/+2. Now, this card was originally revealed, I don't know by who, but it was a foreign streamer, and the translation wasn't very good. The translation was originally, if this guy kills a minion, gain +2/+2, and I thought that was crazy if you could give it taunt against an aggressive deck. Now, it's if it attacks and kills a minion. That makes it a lot worse. That's basically the Boogie Monster effect. But it's got Rush, it's better statted, so maybe it's a little better than I think. It's basically a 5-mana, 6/6-ish Rush minion that can get a little bit bigger later. Now, it just feels to me like a fairly honest Tempo Warrior card. Tempo Warrior is not really a thing, and honest cards don't really see a lot of play in Constructed, if any whatsoever. So I don't have high hopes for the card, but it's pretty interesting, and I hope I'm wrong. We have one of the Hunter legendaries, Emerus, 10-mana Hunter card. It's an 8/8 dragon, so Bone Drake can summon this for you in Arena. That's probably most of the play it's going to get. The battle cry is it doubles the attack and health of all minions in your hand. Now, before you get too excited about that effect, and it's certainly exciting, because, I don't know, maybe you can get a double power Leroy or a King Crush, and oh my god, the numbers are big. You have to think about it this way. It only buffs the things in your hand, and when you play this, it does nothing. So you need to be pretty far ahead as Hunter, with cards still left in your hand, on turn 10. Now, those are very unlikely things. Usually, if you have cards left in your hand, if you've made it to turn 10, you've either completely lost the game, or your opponent's near dead. And if your opponent's near dead, you're probably better off just, using your hero power and just playing a smaller guy. Now, that's not always going to be the case, but this is a pretty clumsy card, is what I'm saying. It's very unlikely that you're going to be playing Hunter in any way, shape, or form. It being turn 10, you are nowhere near dead, your opponent is nowhere near dead, you have a lot of cards left in your hand, and you can afford to do absolutely nothing for one turn. That's a lot of stuff that has to go very much your way. Now, I'm not saying that won't happen, I'm not saying Hunter's not going to be capable of doing that, but it's certainly not what Hunter traditionally does. So be very careful about speed crafting this card because the numbers are large, alright? Be a bit careful. Last card on the list, we got Ravencaller, 3 mana, 2/1. The battlecry adds 2 random 1-cost minions to your hand. It's a bit of a tricky card to analyze because some 1-drops are so far ahead of the power curve that it's probably just pretty good. Like, the way I think about it is, if you play this and you have a decent number of spells and you're like 2 mana worms, is that good? Yeah, it's really good. The expected result, though, seems pretty weak, but again, a lot of other decks have a lot of synergy from one, playing a lot of different cards, like, maybe you're playing the new Shaman Death Knight card. Whenever you play a minion, you get a random Shaman spell. So, you play 3 minions in one with this card, that's pretty good. Or you could be playing decks that have a lot of minion buffs, in which case it's good to have a lot of tokens. And this is a pretty good token minion. The average result of a 1-drop is quite strong. So it's certainly a very interesting card, though on a low base power level. That's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed another Kripp review of the upcoming Witchwood expansion, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.